Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Happiness Journey with Dr. Dan podcast, where every journey is worth living. My name is Dr. Dan, and I'm your host for today's episode. I'm a bilingual neurolinguistic programming and cognitive behavior psychotherapist specializing in anger management issues, both court appointed and private, marriage and relationship coaching using the EFT method, dissociative disorders, narcissistic personality disorders, depression, anxiety, dream analysis, and also provide life, business, and retirement coaching support. I provide individual one-on-one session in both French or English and also do group settings. If you need any assistance, reach out to DMV Therapy and Coaching Services at 301-325-1550, and our website can be found at lifecoachdanamzalek.com. Today, I'm very excited to have for our 9th episode of season 24 a very special guest, author and relationship expert, Dr. Mark Hicks. And just like every of my past episode, I will leave it up to the guests to properly introduce themselves, as no one can do a better job. Doc, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I'm very glad to be here. Yes, I am an author. My book is Learning Love, Building a Life That Matters, and Healthy Relationships That Last. And that's really what everyone's looking for, is that life that matters and healthy relationships that last. And that is done through healthy, happy, thriving relationships of love. That book was originally published as a self-published item. It's recently been picked up by Morgan James Publishing. That will be distributed nationwide in 2025, wherever books are sold. I'm very excited about that news. In the meantime, on my website, which is markahicks.com, make sure you get my middle initial in there, markahicks.com, I have a free ebook about the 5 components of love that I teach in the book. Love is a practice. It is a learned skill set, whether that's at home or at work, in our neighborhoods, wherever we have connections and relationships, we learn how to do that. And by learning and practicing the 5 components of love, anyone can build happy, healthy, thriving relationships, even if they come from a dysfunctional family background, been through a divorce, uh, had relationship trauma, as because love is a learned skill set. Wherever you start, that's okay. You can learn to build the relationships you want.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Mark, for being a part of the podcast. I mean, your skill set definitely and knowledge in relationship is crucial. So, here's the first question I'm going to ask you. It's very clinical in some aspect, but just like we have PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress syndrome, we have PTRS, which is post-traumatic relationship syndrome. So, in this case, people who suffer from past traumatic experience in their relationship, what would you recommend them to be able to start changing the way that they were before that may have caused this kind of problem? But most of them that dealing with trauma are usually the victim. So how do you get away from that?
Yeah, absolutely. In the 5 components of love that I teach, the first one is actually grief. And that surprises people because we think love is always about bubblegum and butterflies. It's all about sweet and beautiful. And that's part of it. We can get to that. But when we have been through trauma, and to some extent, everyone goes through those difficult times in some measure, no one gets through life without scars. Everyone has struggles. And everyone comes from a family that in some way is at least a little odd or quirky in some measure, and sometimes it's abusive or toxic or highly dysfunctional. If we learn how to grieve, we can develop our comeback story. We work through those difficult traumatic things of our life, and grief becomes a healer. So many times we just want to press it away, push it out of our life, try to forget about it. That grief is still going to be there. It's still going to come back to haunt our life. If we face the difficult things that we've been through and learn how to grieve, we can have a journey of healing in that grief. And very often that's going to require help. I always say everyone should be in counseling.
Yeah.
Everyone should have a therapist, a coach, a counselor of some kind, because even if you came from a healthy, happy family background, there are still some things that you don't know about relationships, and you can still have very tough times in relationships along the way. I came from a very healthy, happy, thriving background as a child, had great parents growing up, but still I ended up in a toxic first marriage when I was young. I didn't always know what I know now. And that relationship ended in divorce. I still have the emotional scars to prove it. uh, whatever background we come from, we are still subject to have those difficult times. Get help because life is complicated.
Mhm.
We go to a doctor for our physical ailments. We go to a dentist for our toothache. We go to a mechanic if our car doesn't start. Why would we do any less when we have emotional trauma and mental health issues? If we learn to grieve and we find the professional help to help us grieve, we can begin working our way through those traumas of the past and set ourselves on a healing path to have those connections, those relationships that we really want. Trauma doesn't have to define our future. One of the things that I always say is that some things in life are so painful, they leave a hole in our heart.
Mhm.
But you can live a really good life with a hole in your heart.
Yes.
And once we learn that we can't fix the past, we're going to live with those emotional scars. We're going to live with that hole in our heart. But we can still live a great life with a hole in your heart. You can still have those connections, those relationships. Just like if someone lost an arm in an industrial accident, life's never going to be the same. That arm is not growing back. But with proper help, with proper therapy, learning new skills, we can live a great life despite that terrible event. The same is true for emotional trauma. There's going to be a hole in your heart if you've been through a traumatic event, but you can live a really good life with a hole in your heart.
That's amazing. Now, the healing process depends on from one person to the other. Do you feel that those who have gone through toxic relationship in the past, Mark, where the person deals with NPD, narcissistic behaviors, etc., does that impact the person differently versus other type of relationship that they've suffered from? So does it mean that trauma is trauma no matter what kind of impact they have had in their past relationship, or is it varies in intensity?
But it does vary in intensity, and that's why I say everyone should have their own counselor. We can talk about it in broad terms of how important grief is and things of that nature, but you should have your own coach or counselor or therapist, someone to help you through because every journey is unique and it is going to be a matter of intensity. And in learning these how to have healthy relationships, if you grew up in a healthy family, you may have one or two or three of the components that I talk about in my book to building those relationships. It may feel like it comes natural.
Yes,
If you came from a dysfunctional family, you may not have any, or maybe one,
correct.
and you're having to start at a much more difficult place. But that doesn't mean you can't learn it.
Mhm.
And so, yes, every journey is different. It's all a matter of intensity. Get the individual help you need. But the encouragement that I want to give is there is a path to building healthy relationships, even if you know none of the components now and you were abused as a child, you taught exactly what love is not supposed to be.
Mhm.
You can start where you are and learn the skill set of love.
I see. Now, when it comes to the trust level, okay, someone who has gone through a traumatic experience where their significant other cheated on them for whatever reason, how can they learn to trust someone else in the future? When can they say this person is not the same as my ex, or is not the same as what I've dealt with? But how can you train your brain, Mark, to be able to convince it otherwise?
I think it's a process. And I always say that trust has to be both given and earned at the same time. That
Okay.
if we're unwilling to give any trust at all, we've got all our defenses up, there's really nothing someone can do to earn trust if we're not willing to give it. It can't be taken from us. No matter what they do, no matter how trustworthy they are, if we're not willing to give it, it will never happen. It must be freely given. However, if we give it freely and blindly, then we're probably going to get hurt
Okay.
because some people are just not trustworthy.
Yes,
And
correct.
so there is this dance, this dynamic
Mhm.
of giving trust, but not fully, not completely, and allowing that person to have enough trust to earn that trust. And as they earn it, we give more and they earn more. And we have this dynamic of advancing in our trust while simultaneously giving and earning. If we just want people to earn it without being willing to give it, it won't work. If we just give it without any expectation of people earning it, we'll get hurt in the process. We have to have both at the same time, and that is a process. It's not going to be an instantaneous, I'm going to start trusting people. That can be pretty dangerous.
Yeah, very.
Allow it to be a process of giving and receiving, or of allowing people to earn it, and giving more trust as it's earned. But you must give them an opportunity. If you decide because your spouse cheated on you, you're never going to be able to trust anyone is in your life ever again. There's no way people can prove they will never ever cheat. It's not possible to prove that beyond doubt, that it would never happen under any circumstance. It can't be proven. And so you have to give enough to allow them to see, to allow yourself to see them as a trustworthy person. Allow it to be a dance that you do over time.
So do you truly believe in that universal statement where a cheater always a cheater, or once a cheater, they can actually change their behavior and become more trustworthy? So where do you stand in that? Do you feel that people are capable of changing and becoming better people? Or if they cross that boundary or that untrusty line, do you feel that there's hope for them or not?
I believe people can change, but the only people who change are those that want to.
Okay,
You cannot change someone.
thank
You
you.
cannot, if you may want to change them, but you cannot change someone who does not want to change. I do believe that there is recovery from anything. That we can come back and live a better life if we choose to. But it is going to be a process. And if in that situation that you give where a spouse has cheated, if you want to make that relationship work, again, there's going to need to be therapy there. There's need to be counseling, and get to the whys of why is that person cheating. There could be a number of different reasons behind it, and as we begin to get to the root causes, we may see that it's not just about cheating, but there's other things at play that can be addressed so that cheating is not part of that person's life. But it has to happen because a person wants to and puts in the effort. People don't just instantly change. And if someone's telling you, "Oh, I'm different now," there needs to be evidence of that. There needs to be evidence that they have gone to counseling, or they have made some changes in their life to purposefully live a different way. I'm a big believer in the possibilities of people, but I'm also realistic
Yeah,
that not everyone will change.
I
So
see.
yes, everyone can change, but only those who want to and put in the effort.
I see. I deal a lot with helping people through difficult marriages. What I've seen with most therapists out there, most marriage counselor, the problem is that when they ask the first question, when they meet with the couple, they said, "What is wrong in your marriage?" Most of them never start the question with, "What do you find to be the best when you first met?" Or what
Mm-hmm.
brought you together? So they already start with a negative. So of course they're gonna have the Niagara Falls of issues that's coming in, and
Right.
then be able to tell the therapist, "Oh, he did that wrong, he did this wrong." So when someone goes through trauma, Mark, and they feel that they've tried everything they can to be able to make the relationship work, is there a specific angle that you would suggest in terms of, okay, well, you would put the effort, but of course there's some irreconcilable differences, so this is something that there's no hope to fix. But can people who went through trauma together, like a married couple, and when they divorce, is there a chance for the relationship to get better?
It is possible. Some people, there's a saying that I've heard from some people, that I love them, but I can't live with them. Uh, and though that is possible,
Okay.
that for whatever reason the dynamics just can't work with people living that close together, but they may still be able to have some measure of a relationship uh, outside of that marriage, and that comes from this. Uh, in my book, I describe one of the components of love is practicality. Emotion brings us together. Practicality keeps us together. And
Yes,
so many times we have an emotional connection, so we love that person, but we can't live together because we haven't done the practicality side of love, that component of love that is practical. This is the way we live together well. And so when we aren't able to live together well, maybe because of trauma, maybe because of bad habits or mistakes made, or whatever the reason may be, we may still have an emotional connection to that person, but we might not be able to live with them because of the practical realities. And one of those practical realities is some relationships need to end.
mhm.
And sometimes, because I'm a relationship coach and write books about love, people expect that I will say that all relationships can be salvaged and saved and thrive. And theoretically, if everyone puts in the effort and practices the five components of love and does the things that you need to do to make a relationship work, it can happen, but that's only theoretical. In reality, the practical reality is that some relationships have to end. Abuse is not allowed. You do not need to live in an abusive relationship. If that person can change, fine. But if they do not wish to change, are not going to do what it takes to change, and you're in an abusive relationship, those relationships need to end. And so we have to make that very difficult decision of, when have I put forth the effort to make this relationship work, that I have an emotional connection and it means a lot to me, but on a practical level, it cannot work. And once again, I would say, don't keep that a secret. Don't try to make that decision in isolation or under the emotional difficulties that are natural in that situation. Get help for that, and help make that decision with some wisdom and some practicality that comes from getting the help you need.
So beside grief, there's four more that you didn't mention. So what are the others?
So grief is the first component. That lays our foundation. That's our comeback story from the hurts of life. So we can keep our heart open and stay connected and not put up those barriers and defensive things. Because when if you meet someone and who keeps people at arm's length and is defensive and pushes people out of their life, those are people that have been hurt.
Yes.
Grief helps us go past those hurts to stay connected. The second is emotion. That's the one everyone knows. That love is emotional. Relationships, we want that emotional connection. That becomes very natural for some people. For others that are more cerebral, more maybe introverted, it might be more difficult. And if you've been through a lot of trauma, it might be difficult to have those emotional connections. You don't have to change your personality. It's okay if it doesn't come natural. It's a practice. And I just say, practice it. You get better, like every other skill set. Learn to say, I love you, if you don't already know how to do that. And if that is a word that is too loaded because of a traumatic past, that your family used it as a weapon, then okay, don't say that. Say, I appreciate you,
Yes.
or say thank you for people that do nice things for you. Learn how to express your emotions in a way that shows people you care about that you care about them. That's very important for relationships. It comes natural to a lot of people, but not everyone. If it doesn't come natural, just practice. The third, as we just mentioned, is practicality. Emotion brings us together, practicality keeps us together. These are things like learning to deal with money issues if you're a married couple, or communication skills, which is a learned skill set, or taking care of yourself, because things like anxiety and depression are things that take a toll on us, but they also take a toll on our relationships, and those are treatable conditions. So a practical element is just taking good care of ourselves, and again, getting the help we need to do that, doing those practical things that help us live together well. That's something that gets missed a lot of times in the discussion of love, because they don't make rom-com movies about the practical guy that makes good decisions. We
Mhm.
always focus on the emotion of it, and maybe even the grief that comes with love. But very rarely do we see just people living together making good decisions. That doesn't make a good story, but it
Yeah.
makes a good life. The fourth is acceptance. And that's not only the acceptance of other people, but it's accepting yourself. It is loving yourself, because we cannot love people more than we love ourselves. Brene Brown's written a lot about this, noted for that particular statement. We cannot love other people more than we love ourselves. So many times we're looking for relationships to fulfill us so that we have love to give, but that's not the way it works. We have to have love first. It's grown organically in us. It's not a commodity like money that we can go out and get a second job or a loan or borrow money from a friend. We have to grow love within us. It's organic. So if we want to love people, we want to connect with our family, our friends, our coworkers, in whatever relationships we have to start by loving ourselves. That means understanding our own value, understanding that we can be compassionate to ourselves, not beating ourselves up, talking negatively to ourselves like so many of us have habits of doing, but allowing ourselves to be a person of value so that we can see other people as valuable as well and connect on that level. And finally, the fifth one is passion. And this is a passion for life. This is the wind in our sails. This is the enjoyment of life. And the secret ingredient to passion for life is fun. Remembering to have fun. Now, all of life can't be fun. Some of it's serious. That's why practicality is the third component of love. And some of it is tragic. That's why grief is the first component of love. But let's not forget the fifth one either. Let's keep fun, excitement, enjoyment, passion as part of our life. So many couples, they
Forget.
may do very well in the checklist of life. They have a good job, they are good parents, they have a nice home, they have friends, they're active in the community, whatever their checklist is of living a good life. But then they wonder, is this it? Why are we doing this? And they've forgotten to enjoy it. They're working very hard to keep the home, keep the job, take care of the kids, do all the chores, but they've forgotten to enjoy themselves and have fun together. Fun is a vital aspect of our life of love. And so if you can grieve the hurts of life and come back from that, you can connect emotionally. You learn to live practically in a wise way with one another. You love yourself so that you can love others. And you live life with passion, enjoying your life as much as possible. You can build healthy relationships even if you have to start from scratch, even if you did not come from a healthy background. You can start today practicing those components of love and build the thriving relationships you want.
That's beautiful, Mark. And the thing is, what I've noticed as well, um, everything you're saying is very, very theoretical to a certain point, because when something happens subjectively to us, all those five components no longer is applicable to us because we have so much rage, so much emotional involvement in the relationship that we do not even know what's 1 plus 1 is.
Yeah.
When you talk about grief, you talk about practicality, you talk about passion, you talk about all that. But when something bad happens to us, it's like telling someone, be happy, but they're homeless, they have not no food to be able to eat
Right.
every day. Be this. So how can you allow positive thoughts to come into your mind and then still bypass all that and still find happiness despite the hurdles and the challenges that you face every single day? And when it comes to relationship, depending on the length of that relationship that you're in, if you either your spouse has cheated on you or they break up for whatever reason and you have 2 kids and then you're gonna go through a nasty divorce, it's very hard to be able to kind of go through that process and find happiness afterwards or
Yeah.
rebuild relationship that you have lost. So yeah, it's all great what we're saying right now, but what is the percentage of people that can recover from all that?
Well, I do believe in recovery, but it will take time. And that's why you have to start with that component of grief. If you're in that place where you've just been pummeled by life's events and you are going through that tragedy, then yes, you're not going to be able to get to the passion for life yet. Okay, that's down the road, but
Yes.
it is there, and it's something that we should know is there. That can be part of our life and part of how we live life, but it's not there yet. And we start with that grief if that's where we are. We start with grieving that loss and that hardship that we're going through and getting help for that so that we can get to these others. um, but the idea behind the five components of love is to give us that ability to conceptualize where we are, that we may have to understand these others aren't for me right now, but I can grieve. I can do that. No matter how bad things are, I can grieve where I'm at and begin that healing process because grief is a healer. And it's good to know then there are those others out there. There is emotional connection and a practical life and self-love. And I would say that's the next place to start is by appreciating who we are because we are not defined by what happens to us. The things of life uh, are not going to define who we are and our value. They'll define our circumstances, and it certainly affects how we feel, but they don't affect our value as a person. And as soon as we begin to understand and separate the idea of what happens to us from who we are, we can grieve what's happened to us, but know we are valuable enough to deserve emotional connections and a practical life of wisdom and a life of passion. That we still deserve that, even if we've been through tragedy or abuse or trauma, we still deserve those things. And so we begin with grief and we begin with practicing self love and compassion to give ourselves time to heal.
I see. Is there, I mean, if someone is in the grieving process, and I know everyone is different, but how long does your program or whatever you want to call this that allows people to stay too long in a grieving phase? is there a certain time or a certain time of period where they have to say, okay, I need to snap out of it. Enough is enough. So I need to be able to get myself into a different position.
Yeah, it's impossible to say how long the grieving process is because everyone is different and every situation is different. The intensity is different, and that's why I do always emphasize get with a counselor so you can have your own personal conversations
Correct.
about where you are and begin to understand there is chronic grief that
Yes.
we can stay in this
Phase.
forever. I once I met a lady in a counseling program where I worked. She was I think 72 years old, came in because life had just gotten so heavy for her. She was just being emotionally crushed under it, angry, bitter, just all kinds of rage and depression and all types of negative emotions she was experiencing. Long story short, as we worked our way through her history, it all went back to a falling out she had with her sister 50 years prior
Wow.
when she was 22 years old. Her sister had been her best friend growing up. They had a terrible fight, huge falling out, never spoke again. And she had the idea if my sister would betray me, I can't trust anyone. And
Okay.
so she had gotten married, she'd had kids, had terrible relationship with all of them, had always pushed everyone out of her life, lived her life with bitterness and rage because instead of grieving the loss of her sister, she interpreted that as I've got to fight the whole world to keep them from hurting me and assuming everyone was out to get her, even if they loved her.
I see.
And it's just such a sad story that of what life could be. So her life could have been so different had she grieved that in those early stages of life and come to some sort of healing, knowing that yeah, some people will hurt you, but not everyone,
I
and
see.
we can learn to trust again. Uh, it's something that we have to allow ourselves to go through rather than putting ourselves in a prison of our own defensiveness.
That is so true. But before we get to you sharing to the listeners about where they can find your program or your book, etc. Um, I just want to be able to see if there is, especially in today's society, Mark, where it's more about instant gratification. People get into relationship with the idea of what you can do for me versus what I can do for you. You mentioned something about giving and receiving, okay, earlier in the podcast.
Mhm.
So, but when we give something, we give it with the heart, but without really the expectation to get reciprocity. And that's what really allow us to be able to grow internally. Because when we give, let's say, donation, we don't expect the donation to come back to us. We give it with our heart because we know it's going to help other people. So if we give a part of us, knowing that it can help that other person, but if we expect something else in return, isn't that selfish to a certain extent instead of being selfless?
It, there can be an expectation, I think, a reasonable one, if you're in a relationship, that there will be some give and take. But if you love yourself, you have that self love, and you're loving other people out of that love, then you're not going to need that return as much. That if they do make mistakes, if they don't hit that mark just right of returning it the right way, you're not going to have that specific expectation. Of course, all of us enjoy when people are kind to us and treat us well, and we have a right to expect that with the people who love us. But loving ourselves, having our own compassion, and the love that grows out of us, we can give that selflessly, and
Oh,
we are growing it organically, and so we don't have to have a return on the investment.
okay.
We are allowed to give it freely, and ironically, when we do that, we tend to get more, even more back.
That's so true. Exactly. So, how can people find your book, Mark? We're about to wrap up. Let people like know. You said that now they're gonna publish it by a publishing company, and is
Yes.
available in 2025. But the free ebook that you mentioned, is this just a synopsis of your book, or what they can expect from this ebook?
It is. It's a synopsis of the book, just a brief overview of the five components of love, much as I've described now. You can get that in the free ebook to begin learning and practicing the five components of love. That's available on my website, markahicks.com. I also have there links to my YouTube channel, my social media, all the things that you might want to check out. I also have a contact page there because I'm available for speaking engagements, to do workshops,
Beautiful.
and also available for coaching if anyone's interested in that as well. So, or if you just want to say hi, anybody in the audience that just wants to contact and let me know that you enjoyed the show, I'd love to hear from you. And so, yes, go to my website, markahicks.com, and I will keep you posted on when pre orders are available for the book that's coming out in June of 2025.
Beautiful, Doc. Well, that is all the time that we have for today's podcast. I really appreciate you taking the time of your busy schedule to join us. And thank you again for participating and inspiring on many listeners with your incredible knowledge in relationship. Now, we hope that you've all enjoyed today's episode. And I'm also very excited about the many upcoming guests that we have scheduled for season 24 of the Happiness Journey podcast, filled with inspirational stories, just like the one that you listened today. Now, here are some concluding words of wisdom. Maintaining healthy relationship with friends, family, and coworkers is essential for mental well-being. These connections provide support, comfort, and a sense of belonging during challenging times. Positive relationship can help reduce stress, anxiety, and feeling of isolation, acting as a buffer against mental illnesses. Open communication, trust, and empathy are the foundation that strengthen these bonds. Just as we care for our physical health, nurturing our relationship helps keep our emotional health in balance. Surround yourself with people who uplift you and encourage your growth. By investing in this connection, you create a strong support system that helps you thrive. Healthy relationships are key to a healthy mind. My name is Dr. Dan Emzalag, and you may all keep pursuing your amazing journey in life.